Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Creating the New Normal Leadership in a Post-Pandemic World. This is Ben Baker and Claire Chandler. We are live. We are actually live this week, and this is exciting. We're every last Friday of the month, we are going live to be able to answer the questions that you guys have on leadership, and we are so excited to have you here. So, Claire, I'm going to let you start this off this week. How you been?
I am fantastic, my friend. Good to see you as always. We've been having really good chats over the last several weeks and a couple of months, and even earlier this week. So I'm doing great.
Perfect. You know, we need to get into this. We need to get into this. So you off air, you had some thoughts. I'm gonna let you get started because you had some serious thoughts from last week or a couple weeks ago, and I want to get into that conversation. So you're up.
I'd love to. And I really should, as your friend, be concerned when you go on a rant. But it's so entertaining for me. So I thought maybe I would stoke the embers and get you on another rant.
Absolutely.
Cool. So I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the brand story. We did a deep dive, I think 2 Fridays ago. And part of what you talked about it in terms of the brand story was the fact that it is at its core the hero's journey.
Right.
And the reason we like heroes and are attracted to heroes is not because they are perfect, but because they are flawed, that they make mistakes. And we translated that into business, and we said all companies make mistakes, and they are in essence human because they are run by and staffed by humans and built by humans, etc. And so earlier this week, you and I were talking offline, and you had related to me a very unsatisfactory experience that you had as a customer. And so I thought maybe today, at least for the start of this live, we could dive into the customer experience, starting from that story that you shared with me and the experience that you had.
Well, it's interesting because it's not the fact that people fail that we are excited about. We're excited that people fail and that they recover. It's that recovery that makes the true hero. It's like, okay, I did something wrong, something blew up, something didn't go right. I dusted myself off. I took a look around. I figured out what went wrong. I reevaluated, and I moved forward. And that's what's really key. The key thing is, as I tell suppliers this all the time, I actually tell clients this all the time. I say, look, I'm not perfect. I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to do something that's going to, frustrate you. I'm going to do something that is going to be something that you didn't exactly want to have happen. It's going to happen sometime in a 10, 15, 20-year relationship. And a lot of my relationships are that long. I'm human. Tell me. Give me the opportunity to understand how I've, made something wrong and allow me to fix it. And that's the key thing. If we can fix things, if we can sit there and say, you know what, mea culpa, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to do this, or this happened, and here's how we can fix this that's going to be good for you. And that's all we can ever expect from people. If we expect everybody to be perfect 100% of the time, you know what? We're going to be going from vendor to vendor to vendor to vendor to vendor for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
If we can sit there and build relationships, and know that 95 to 99% of the time, these girls are great. And every once in a while, they're going to mess up and something's going to happen. But if something does happen, they're going to sit there and they're going to fix it. That's a relationship. And I think that we need to be thinking about that both outside and inside the company, as I mentioned in this story. Now, this story goes back probably 5 or 6 months. It probably started sometime in late 2019. And to say that I was working for one of my customers, and we were putting a project together, and this project had 7 or 8 components that had to come from 7 or 8 different suppliers. Okay, so we were amalgamating a whole bunch of stuff, and it had to be there at a certain time at a certain date because it was for government year end, and if it's not delivered by a certain time and it's not invoiced properly, the government goes crazy and they can't put it on this year's budget and they lose their budget for next year. So there's all these things to consider. Fine. Now, this particular part of the program was coming from the United States. And I am maniacal when I put on my invoice, especially when it's coming from the US. And this was something that was made in the US. You need to put a NAFTA with this. You need to have, the right paperwork with it, the right documentation, the invoice with it, so that way it gets through the border easily. Well, not only did they not read my paperwork, but they didn't charge my brokerage account. They shipped it to the wrong address. They didn't put the NAFTA in there. There was 100 things that they did wrong, that if they had just called me or at least followed the instructions on the purchase order, they would have been fine. And okay, we fixed it. We got it to the customer on time. The customer never knew. The customer's account never got charged. We reversed it before they had a chance to get me invoiced. The customer was, no worse because of this. But it took an enormous amount of my time to fix their mistake. And we came to a resolution, and that resolution was they were going to pay for the shipping. Great. Now, the problem was, for the next 3 months, on the 15th of every month, I got another invoice for that shipping amount, saying that since you owe this and it's now 30 days overdue, it's now 60 days due, it's now over 90 days overdue. And every time I got this, I called up, the manager on the shift, and I said, hey, listen, got another invoice. Oh, no, we're going to take care of it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. We're going to take care of it. And it never got taken care of. Well, they finally said, no, we're going to get you a credit memo. And the other day, another invoice showed up. And I didn't even open it. And I sent it back, and I went online and I found out who the owner of the company was. And I CC'd them on my email, voicing my displeasure of how this whole process was going on. Well, turns out two things. One, it actually was a credit memo, but it says invoice on it. It's a reversed invoice. So if it had just said credit memo in the subject line of the email, I would have been fine, and we would have solved this whole thing in about 2.3 seconds. Fine, I finally got my credit memo for this thing. It's over. It's done. But this thing went on, and nothing happened for about 24, 48 hours. And then did I get a phone call from the owner of the company? And my displeasure in this email was quite extensive. No, I got it from
ambiguity, right?
There was no ambiguity in the displeasure that I was facing after 90 days of dealing with this stuff.
Right.
But I didn't get a phone call back from this person. I got a phone call from not even the customer service manager, but the inside sales manager. Okay. And the comment that I got was, and the first thing I said to her says, look, I'm going on a Zoom call in about 4 minutes. And she starts talking. Not, can I call you back? Not, is there a better time? Not in this, that, the other thing. She just keeps talking. And then it's the fact that she's doing me a favor by calling me. That she didn't have to call me. That she was going above and beyond. She made me feel like she was going above and beyond, calling me to let me know that, well, this is how it is. And this is the first time we've ever had a problem with somebody with the invoice, with the credit memo being called an invoice. So it's obviously my fault.
Right. Sure. Well, I hope you got her mailing address so you can send her the gold star that she so clearly deserves.
Well, I'm seriously thinking about buying a few books on customer experience and mailing them to her. Collect. What I'm thinking about doing is putting it on on a third sending an invoice, parcel paid to directly to her. Actually, that's not a bad idea. We may actually do that.
Yeah. Well, at least the shipping. At least charge her for the shipping.
Exactly. I don't mind paying for the books, but charge her for the shipping part of it.
Proportional response.
Exactly. But there's so many things from a leadership point of view that are holes in this, because and And their whole comment is, well, because of COVID-19 this and COVID-19 that, COVID-19 get over it. You know what? Customers are customers are customers, and customers are willing to work with you if you communicate properly, if you make a mistake and you fix it, if you let people know what the challenges are and how you're working to solve it and you solve it, then that's fine. We can work with you on that. But when you ghost us, when you make it feel like it's our fault, when you blame, a worldwide situation without having any resolution for this, you need to really give your head a shake, because leadership needs to look at this and say, all right, do we have the right people in place, and are our people trained properly to deal with customer experience? Because this thing showed serious holes, and there was an absence in leadership by the owner of the company not actually picking up the phone themselves and calling me. If I had gotten that email, I would have been on a phone call. I would have gone downstairs, I would have gotten the information, found out what exactly happened, and I would have been on a phone call in about half an hour.
Right.
But that's not what happened. I got a phone call, not from the vice president of sales, not, for the vice president of marketing, not from the owner of the company, but from some customer, not even the customer service manager, but the inside sales manager, and made me feel that this was my fault.
Yeah.
And we as companies need to start thinking about this, because customer experience is going to be a gold standard moving forward. That's how we're going to be able to differentiate ourselves as companies. If we're not doing that, if we're not developing a customer experience model that is designed first, last, and only with the customer in mind, and how do we wow this customer time after time after time, and how do we enable our people and develop leaders that believe that customer service and customer experience is number one, we're in serious trouble as companies. And I think that, as leaders, now is the time we need to start looking at it. What policies, what procedures, what opportunities, what people do we have in place? What training have we done to make sure that our teams are full of the right people doing the right things at the right time and empowered to do so, to be able to make sure our customers are taken care of? Because if we don't, we become another low-cost, low-value commodity that literally is easily replaced and easily forgotten. Right. So I want to, step off my soapbox, but that's where I wanted to start this conversation, because it all comes down to leadership and communication. It all comes down to setting a vision and living that vision within the company.
Yeah, you are 100% right, and the employees, especially those who are on the front lines who interact with the customers, are only as good as the leadership at the top. Yeah. So if you have one bad apple, the saying of one bad apple spoils the bunch. Well, how did it get to that place, right? And we talked about every human makes mistakes. I remember very distinctly my 4th grade teacher saying, there is a reason there are erasers on pencils. It's because everyone makes mistakes.
But I want one on my golf pencil.
Why don't they put one on the golf pencil? Now you're going to get me on a soapbox. I totally agree with you. But that always stuck with me, because I thought, you're right. Like you're allowed to make a mistake. Everyone makes them. The differentiator, especially in business and especially in leadership, is the recovery. How do we make up for that? And, to me, you talk about the need for training, where's the breakdown? When there's a breakdown in the how, right, the processes we follow, the scripts we follow as a customer service rep, those breakdowns in the how are exacerbated when there's a disconnect with the why. Yeah. And the why has to be fueled, it has to be fed, and it has to be reinforced from the top down. Right. So if there's a culture, I always think about the company Zappos. Right. Tony Hsieh, who's the CEO of Zappos, has a very clear picture in his mind of what Zappos will always be about. And they are one of the most, if not the most, customer-centric companies I've ever interacted with. I've interacted as a consumer. I've met Tony Hsieh in person. one of the things that he does is um, any person that gets brought into Zappos as an employee, they spend their first 2 weeks in a customer service center in Arkansas. They
Nice.
learn from the back office. They interact with customers. They understand the impact of what they do, which isn't just they sell shoes and it's free shipping each way, right?
Yeah.
It's they bring happiness to their customers. And you just brought up a word that has been very key for us in past conversations, which is empower.
Right.
Your customer service reps are empowered when there's a mistake made to make it right.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of latitude and leeway and autonomy and authority to refund a customer, to send a different type of a shoe, to help a customer to fix what breaks down. Because even in a company as customer and culture centric as Zappos, they know that something is going to break down at some point.
And it will.
Absolutely.
When you're selling what, tens of thousands of shoes a month, if not hundreds of thousands of shoes a month, right, something is going to get wrong. The wrong color is going to get shipped. The wrong size is going to get shipped. Whatever. There's a million things that can happen.
Yeah, I remember a story he told about, this was several years ago now. There was a customer whose husband called Zappos, and he was very upset because his wife had ordered a pair of shoes and she had suddenly passed away. And so these shoes arrived after her death, and he was so emotional about it, and he said, I don't know what to do with these shoes. Well, the customer service rep didn't say, can you hold please while I go get somebody better qualified to resolve this. This is the frontline customer service rep who said, not only do I want you to just return the shoes and we're going to refund your shipping. He then sent flowers to the man on behalf of Zappos. He didn't have to get approval.
Yeah.
He knew that was the right thing to do. And why was that the right thing to do? Not just because it was in his nature to do the right thing, but because he was brought on and trained and communicated with and respected and empowered enough to always do the right thing and to always feel like he had the power to fix things. And I think a lot of companies make that misstep, right? That the lack of empowerment, they say, okay, you're the front line, you're going to take all the angry phone calls. And I've worked in a call center. I know that these guys
it's brutal.
Are taking bullets, all the time, and they go home with shrapnel from some of these customers. And if you don't empower them to resolve at least a certain level of grievance, what you end up saying to that customer service rep is, all you're good for is taking the hits. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to come in and be the white knight, right? I'm going to be the one who resolves it to the customer's satisfaction. And you take that power away from them. It's no wonder that customer service is one of the hardest jobs in any business if a company doesn't connect that why with their how.
Well, it's interesting, and there's two different levels of it. Actually, there's three different things that I want to get into this. The first is the fact that every single employee starts off at the front line. I don't care if you're the CFO, I don't care if you're the janitor, I don't care whatever. Everybody within the company sits in a customer experience chair and fields those phone calls. So they have a great idea whether you're going to be in operations, whether you're going to be in shipping, whether you're going to be in marketing, whether you're going to be in sales. You sit there for 2 weeks and you listen to real customers every single day. And quite honestly, I actually think that C-suite and senior management should do this once a month. Or at least once a quarter. Everybody within any organization, if you have a customer service line and you have people that actually sit there and listen to customer service complaints every single day, every single senior person within your company should take, even if it's 4 hours once a month, and sit there and talk to customers. And I think that would be so empowering to be able to understand where the frustrations really lie. And it really comes down to leadership empowering people to be able to do the things they need to do. I love the fact that this guy sent flowers. I mean, I'm a big believer of, if I've got a customer experience person that's done a great job, and I said, do me a favor, could you? Can you patch in your boss onto the call? Why? because I want to tell them what a great job you did. I don't want to fill out your survey. I will fill out your survey. And I do. I absolutely do.
Yeah.
But I want to sit there and I want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you in a way that's not only meaningful to them, but their boss understands what a great job that they're doing. Because unfortunately, you're right. These customer experience people and the customer service people get yelled at day after day, hour after hour, week after week, year after year. And all they hear 99 times out of 100 is, why can't you do this? Or
Right.
why won't this happen? And then all of a sudden they're disempowered and says, or I want to speak to your manager. And then all of a sudden, you're right, that manager comes in as that white knight who fixes the problem, and you feel like, I could have done that just as easily, but I don't have the power to do that. And that disengages your staff.
That's right.
I don't know how many times where I know I'm going to get into a fight. I know I'm going to get into a fight with people. And I'll say, send me to your customer experience team, because I know it's a team that's designed for that dispute resolution, and they actually have the empowerment to do it.
Right.
Especially with telcos. And you know the frontline people, the telcos, the customer service people can make one decision, and the customer experience people, that when they're afraid you're going to leave, they can make another decision. Right. So why am I bothering to deal with the frontline people if I know they're not empowered to make a decision to be able to do the things I need them to do? If they were empowered, if I could have a conversation with them and I know that they had the training and the leadership and the empowerment and the trust of management to be able to make reasonable decisions that were in the best interest of both the customer and the company, then I would deal with them. But when you know that that's not reality, when you know that companies are not training their people properly, they're not empowering their people, they're not trusting their people, they're not leading their people, they're not training their people, you know what, that's when companies break down. That's why, we'll just say, well, it doesn't matter. We'll go from, telco X to telco Y to telco Z, and it doesn't really matter because they're all about the same price. They all offer about the same service. So I leave this phone company and go to somewhere else. Big deal. Who cares? In 2 years, guess what? Since I can port my number back, maybe I'll go back to the one that I was at 2 years ago, because these guys have ticked me off now.
Right.
We've commoditized by not empowering our people, by not training them, by not trusting them. We've created a situation where we've commoditized our companies. And that comes down to leadership and communication.
And the experience of buying a car is very telling in this respect, because unless you are buying a very highly specialized vehicle, a Ford is a Ford is a Ford, a Honda is a Honda. And if I have 3 dealerships within a 25-mile radius from which to buy the car that I've already researched and figured out that I want, what's going to make the decision for me? It's not necessarily the closest one. It's the one that has the best ratings, not from the sales team, but from their service department. Because the sale takes 1 day, right? Yeah. It's a long day. Even if you go in there trying, I just bought a car a couple months ago and I knew the car that I wanted. I test drove it. I loved it. I still couldn't get out of there.
It's still 3 or 4 hours till you get out of there.
Yeah, but I went
2 trips to the bathroom.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, I went to that particular dealership because they had such a good reputation for service. And you brought up a good point earlier. Seldom do customers reach out and contact customer experience team when they've had a good interaction. Well, how can we change that? We can change that, as you say, by empowering those people on the front lines. But the rotational aspect is really key as well in changing the tide, right? If more companies insisted and required that every single person from C-suite on down spent their first 2 weeks in customer service, fielding calls, or at the very least listening in on calls and seeing how they are, what's the trend? What are customers complaining about? What are they interested in? What is the resolution? One of the things that happens is that 1% or 5% of the time that it's a positive customer call, they're going to start to see the impact that they make, right?
Absolutely.
And what they're also going to do is when they rotate out of there and they go to their quote unquote normal role or back to the C-suite or what have you, they really have a much clearer, tangible idea of how the decisions they make, the actions they take, the things that they do and the things that they don't do impact the customer at the end, right? The customer service representatives, customer experience, whatever you want to call them, are often the only impression that a customer has of your company and your brand.
True.
Unless they have the opportunity to meet with the CEO, and that person can be as charismatic as they want, but if the why is not so interrelated to the how and embedded in the who, then it doesn't matter how charismatic your CEO is. He's that Wild West facade that we keep talking about, right? He's propped up by 2x4s, because it's the people on the front lines who carry the message, who build the brand. And you know, the other thing that kind of brings up that your story of this inside sales manager who must have drawn the short straw to call you.
Oh, definitely.
You know, reminds me of is this: we have an obligation to, as leaders, as frontline employees, as customer service reps, whatever, to own our flaws, right? It is really, really easy to be the you know, and I've had a past life as a customer relations director, so I didn't get to talk to the customers until they were really whipped up into a frenzy, right?
Oh yeah.
But there's this opportunity you get when you can turn them around and you can go back to the customer service rep and you can thank them for their hard work and doing what they do. But you know, the impact of you know, the customer experience, just getting somebody to say, we screwed up, we take ownership of that, and we're sorry for it. There are going to be times when we make mistakes as companies, as leaders, that we can't fix it.
No,
that we can't turn it around.
Absolutely not.
You know, that it can't, you cannot be made whole through whatever remediation we put in. But sometimes all we want to hear as a customer is, we're really sorry.
Yeah. And mean it.
And I'm sure
and mean it.
And mean it and have it be genuine and authentic. And I've had customer interactions as a customer, usually with an airline, where I've gotten bumped or, you know, something happened. And all I want them to say is, you know, when they say, well, we can't do anything about it, just say you're sorry. I'm sorry. 2 words.
Yeah.
And you can see in their face, they're dug in and they won't. And that is such a huge disconnect for that company's brand.
Yeah. And I want to take this to a different level. Yes, we have to take care of our customers. And having every employee sitting on a customer service call and understanding, you know, the things from the customer's point of view is enormous. Yeah. But let's take this internally. What if every employee had to spend a week or a day or whatever job shadowing people in a different department? What if marketing had to go out with sales and sales had to go out with marketing and sales had to go spend time in ops or finance or, you know, or on the show, on the production floor or whatever, and actually do the job? Can you imagine if salespeople actually understood the process from start to finish of what it actually took to make an actual part?
Yeah.
You know, and not only would they not promise the impossible because there's a commission at the end of it, but they'd also be far more intelligent talking to customers about the process.
Yeah.
And marketing would understand sales better, and sales would understand marketing better, and everybody would understand finance, and finance would understand what other people do. And if we can set up a system of cross-training, not only does that make us more valuable, God forbid if there's a tragedy, something happens and somebody else has to step in because you're cross-trained, but it gives you far better understanding of the motivations of the other departments. And it gets rid of silos. It gets rid of the us versus them. It gets rid of all the things and allows people to function as one solid team that's focused on the customer, because we understand what it takes for other people within the company to do their job to serve the customer, because we're all
Exactly.
looking at the customer differently.
And, and this is where siloed leadership has gotten us.
Yeah.
Is this sort of, you relayed a story a week or two ago about going to a conference years ago where you had sales in one part of the conference room and ops in the other,
Yeah.
and they had very different messages. They had very different whys, right?
Yeah.
Very different purposes that they were incentivized around. And it's the reason that I do so much work with senior leadership and executive leadership in the C-suite, to bring them together out of their silos and really open their eyes to what you do in your silo impacts the ability, the brand, the capability,
Mm-hmm.
and the ultimate outcome, of this silo. And if you kind of reintroduced yourself to, we are here for a shared purpose, and what I do is going to be benefited if you better understand it and can play a part in it. But that's where siloed leadership has gotten us to. And I have this conversation with CEOs all the time, and their big complaint is, Claire, I can't get these guys and gals to collaborate, to work
Mm-hmm.
together. What's the secret? And I say, let me ask you a question. How are you incentivizing them right now? Do they have shared objectives that are tied to compensation, or are they divided into finance has their bucket and ops has their bucket and sales and marketing and HR and so on? And again, you get that deer in the headlights sort of stare, right? Because
Yep.
they want collaboration, they incentivize individual achievement.
Yeah.
And as long as those two things are in place at the same time, the money is going to win out. Unless you have a unifying why that is authentically cascaded down to the point where you say, this is what we are all pursuing.
Right.
And yes, you have a finance leaning, and yes, you have a sales leaning, or you have an operations leaning, or you're in a different geographic region. But we're all after, through your individual contributions, this shared unifying vision. And until those companies get there, the silos will perpetuate, and you will never grow and innovate and flog your competition to the level that you want to.
And think of the money it's costing organizations. The siloing, I'm sure at a certain size organization, and I'm sure it's not that big, it could be $1 million, or it could be $5 million, or it could be $10 million. But through the inefficiencies that siloing causes, and the animosity that it causes, and us versus them, and my department versus your department, and my budget versus your budget, and my project's more important than your project, so I'm going to sabotage your project so
Right.
my project looks better, and I look better to the CEO, and my fiefdom gets bigger than your fiefdom. And when you start looking at companies that start looking at that way, and I've seen them, I've sat in boardroom conversations where 15 people around a boardroom table really can't stand each other because each one has competing agendas.
Right.
And it's all about my fiefdom. It's not about how we can make the company better. It's how can I make sure that I get every single dime to fund the project that I want, that my pet project.
Right.
And that's when we start breaking down as organizations. That's when we start sitting there going, okay, where's the focus? The focus needs to be on the customer. End of story.
That's right.
End of story. You deal with your people, you deal with your purpose, and the profit comes. And your people are your internal people and your external people. They're all customers. They're all people that need to see the value in your brand and believe in your brand, and they need to see that they get value from the brand, and they believe that they are being served by the brand. That needs to happen both internally and externally. Those are your people. Then you need to have a strong purpose. And if you can bring the people and the purpose together, the profit comes.
Profit will follow.
The profit will follow, but
that's a lagging indicator, right? Your profit
absolutely
is a lagging indicator. It is not it is not what should lead your decisions. It is the sort of ultimate bottom line scorecard, if you will. But if you focus on that first versus top down, how do we really unify this company and get them oriented collectively toward our why? I've been in boardrooms like you, where you literally, you can see the tension, you can see the seething anger, the discontent, the disconnect between the executives around the table. And a lot of companies, by evolutionary design, have pitted their executives against each other.
Absolutely.
Through their compensation, through their view of power, through the spoils of their individual wars. And you talk about, that this is costing money. And the problem is most companies can't quantify the opportunity cost. They can't quantify how much revenue, how much market share we don't have as a result of lack of innovation. But the one big area where they can quantify, or the first big area, I should say, that they can quantify opportunity costs, and I know this is right in your sweet spot, is the loss of well-performing employees.
Yeah.
Right? You use the statistic all the time of every employee, regardless of level, costs $100,000 to replace.
Yep. And that's not an executive employee. An executive employee, people say it's 2.5 to 3.5 times your salary.
Right.
The numbers are staggering.
Yeah.
You lose 10 employees a year, that's $1 million off the bottom line.
That's right. That's right. And even if you lose a mediocre performer, even if you lose a poor performer, if you are not unified around a very crystal clear purpose, how do you know that the reason they were mediocre or subpar was because they didn't have the ability? How do you know it wasn't because you weren't guiding them in a way that they could clearly see the direction we were headed and how I contribute to it? We have this sort of scorecard evaluation of, okay, write the names of all the people on your team and then put them into the A bucket, the B bucket, the C bucket.
Rank them.
Right? Or the top rating, or okay, we're just going to shelve the C players. You better make darn sure first, before you do that exercise, that you've got really rock solid criteria against which you're evaluating their performance and their contribution. And it's not bottom line profit. It's how embedded are they in the organization? How well do they manage their internal networks? How do they collaborate? And how well do they contribute their individual strengths to the common purpose of the company?
Well, I mean, let's forget everybody else. Let's talk about sales. And you got a guy or a girl that's been a top performer for a year or 2 years or 5 years, and all of a sudden they go into a slump. And all of a sudden 2, 3, 4, or 5 months go along, and they're not performing at the level that they were. And the question should be, why? Not it's time to get rid of this person.
Right.
The question is why. What's changed? What are the challenges? Is there something that's keeping them from succeeding? Are they, is there frustrations? Are there roadblocks in the way? Is there a change in leadership that, has there been things within the company that are making this person not as successful as they've been? Companies are great at saying, "Oh, good, we got a great salesperson. They're doing really well. We're gonna cut their territory in half, and we're gonna double their quota." That is the classic thing that sales leaders do, because we're sitting there going, "Okay, well, it's more with less."
Right.
We're going to get more out of them by giving them less.
Right.
And you wonder why they don't succeed.
Yeah.
You wonder why they're frustrated. You wonder why great salespeople pick up, move to a different company, and guess what? They take the customers with them. And they may never contact those customers. They may absolutely never go out and contact those customers again. But guess what? Those customers will find them. Right. If there was a great sales rep and that customer now feels that the new sales rep is not taking care of them, and they don't feel that they're being, taken care of the way they were by the sales rep that left, they're going to go looking to find out where that other person is. And if that person is now somewhere else and selling the same thing or selling something similar, you know what? I may move my business over there, because that's where the relationship is.
That's exactly right. And I was going to just reinforce that, because, and you said this earlier, people don't have relationships with companies. They have relationships with people within them, right? We all have a favorite. If you have this is kind of a painful example right now because we can't visit restaurants, but if you have a favorite local restaurant, you typically have a favorite bartender or a favorite, wait staff, and you say, oh, where's your zone today? Because I want to sit there. And it's not because we think, well, nobody else can pour my wine the way that you can. It's, we have a relationship, we have a rapport. It's interesting as you talk about bringing this conversation internally, the notion that rotating, especially the C-suite through customer service, frequently, consistently, regularly, so that they can really have a firsthand account of the impact that not just their customer service reps, but everybody within the company is having on, the end goal, which is the customer. How powerful would it be for that same C-suite to rotate through, the employee base?
Absolutely.
And walk around and, and sit and ask those questions of a salesperson, to use that example, before they become a quote unquote problem employee, to say, how are things going lately? How are you finding your job? Is there anything that is getting in your way of being ridiculously successful? Because if you're ridiculously successful, yes, the company ultimately benefits from it, but you feel fulfilled as well. Yeah. So how can we turn the light up in you to play to your strengths, to be in your zone, to get your feeling of self-worth as high as it can possibly be, so that you can deliver the best, relationship to the clients, the prospects, the customers, the fellow employees that you can.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Get over the ego, because so many senior management see salespeople that are making $250,000, $350,000, $550,000 a year. And they go, well, they can't make that much money. I'm not making that much money. Well, guess what? A great salesperson is the person who's out there getting kicked in the teeth for the company every single day.
That's right.
They're the people that are out there having the relationship with your customer. They're the ones who are doing that. And if they're making $250,000, $350,000, $550,000, and guess what? The company is making millions and millions and millions of dollars. When I was working for a company and I was head of the sales department and I had $100 million clients. Yeah, I was being paid very well to manage a $100 million client, and most of it was bonus money. But guess what? My vice president was making good money. So was the company itself. Everybody was making profit based on the work that me and the salespeople I had underneath me were doing. Because we were good at our jobs, and because we realized that, if we can go out there and we can work harder, if we can build better customer relationships, if we can steal business away from our competitors because we're good at what we do, we're going to get compensated for it. And we're not going to get penalized because we made quota. And there's a lot of people who do that. You make quota, you're penalized because next year we're going to change your quota. We're going to double your quota, and we're going to cut your territory in half.
Right.
Well, all that does, and it doesn't matter if it's salespeople or marketing people or whatever, when you play with people's compensation, when you change the rules, when you upset the apple cart, you know what? You better have a damn good reason why you're doing it and explain why you're doing it before you go ahead and do it, so everybody's buying in. Because if they don't buy in, why should these people be loyal to you? Why should they be loyal to you as a leader? Why should they trust you? Why should they work for you? Why should they represent your company well if you're not taking care of them?
Right. And the biggest, the biggest complaint I have heard from those who are the decision makers in that compensation structure and who reevaluate it or make it, an across the board cut because, we've all got to cut back. The biggest rebuttal they have to what you just said is, they have started to view this bonus, this commission, this long-term incentive, et cetera, as an entitlement. And we're just not seeing the connection between that incentive and the output that we were hoping for, that we used to see. Well, again, I would argue that the compensation structure is a bit of a lagging indicator.
Yeah.
You want to keep your employees motivated and reminded of your why. You want to keep them connected to how their personal role, how their personal passions, and how their unique strengths contribute to and move the needle toward the achievement of that why. And you want to keep them hungry. And I don't mean starving because you're paying them peanuts. I mean hungry in the sense that they are continually yearning and challenged and motivated and energized by the mission of contributing their very best relationships, their very best talents, their very best ideas to the collective good of the company.
I agree. Absolutely agree. And that comes down to everybody being on the same page. What is your why? What is your purpose?
Right.
What is your purpose as an organization? Where are you going? Where are you today? Where do you want to go? And is everybody on the bus with you? Because if your employees are not on the bus with you, your customers certainly won't be. And we need to sit there and say, okay, guys, we're heading to that mountain over there. That's what we want, the mountain we want to climb, and this is why we want to climb it. And this is what, what success we're going to get as a group because we climb that mountain. We're going to, and we're all going to be better off. Everybody on the bus? Great, let's go.
And what happens when you get that type of clarity is you're going to find that some of the people that you called A players a week ago may not actually be A players, or maybe they are, but they should be in a different role, right?
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you start with that mountaintop view and you say, this is where we're headed. Then you say, this is what we need, not who we need, but what we need to get there. These are the fundamental capabilities, the fundamental attributes we must have as an organization in our DNA to get there. Okay, great. Now, who do we have on the team already? And what do, what of those fundamental attributes do they already have? And where's the gap?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you've got a tangible target, a common enemy that you can address versus arbitrarily calling Joe an A player and Jill a C player because of their performance based on fuzzy descriptions of what their role should be and fuzzy paths toward a future that has not been clearly defined.
Yeah. And this gives every company today, now is the perfect time to be leveling up. To be able to sit there and look at your people and say, okay, over the last however many a number of weeks, however number of months, who stepped up and who stepped back? And take a really clear look and sit there and say, who are the people that were on board? Who are the people that were on the team? Who are the people that were willing to drive the bus? And those people need to be rewarded for their loyalty, for their hard work, for their, for their dedication and the challenges that they've gone through. But we also need to look at the people who says, who are the people that have just sat on their couch and ate bonbons, for the last 6 months and really didn't get their job done and made excuse after excuse after excuse, whether they're leadership, whether they're, the frontline managers, whether they're employees, and take a look and sit there and say, did these people hold their weight? You're going to have circumstances. You're going to have, for instance, I was dealing with someone, she was a single mom with 4 young kids, recently divorced, single mom, 4 young kids, 650 square feet. Really difficult for her to do her job well,
right,
from home with no help. So we need to take those things into consideration. But if we truly have people that have literally sat on their behinds and used every excuse, well, it's COVID season, we don't have to do anything because we can get away with anything, and they do. Those are the people we need to be looking at and say, are those the people we want on the bus long term?
right.
And be able to have the hard conversations with those people and say, look, we're disappointed in what you've done. This is what we need. This is what we're expecting moving forward. Is this something that you're able to be capable of? And you're right, it comes down to clear definition of roles, clear definition of purpose, clear things. And guess what? Because we're in a world where virtual is a reality. We can have a team in Oklahoma. We can have a team in Nebraska. We can have a team in Alaska. We can have a team in Texas. We can have a team in Toronto or Vancouver. We can have teams where we need them, or people where we need them, to be able to be effective and use technology in a way that allow us to engage these people and get the best people where they are, instead of having to motivate them and pay them $20,000 whatever to move to a different city away from their family or whatever. Let them be where they are. Let them be successful in the communities that they like being in, and still be productive, contributing parts of your company. So now is the time we need to start thinking about leveling up our companies and sit there and say, all right, in the United States, there's 40 million people that were on unemployment insurance. Who are the good catches? Who are the people we should be looking at to sit there and say, how can we fill the roles that we know we need moving forward, and not worry about whether they can come into the office 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Find out, are these the people that can help us get to where we need to go and give us the tool set that we don't already have to be able to serve our customers better?
Yeah, absolutely. And that 9 to 5 expectation, I'm sorry, is dead for an overwhelming majority of roles now. We've proven that through this forced pivot. Listen, I mean, there are always going to be roles, and we see this now, where there are essential employees who could not shift to that pivot, who have to work on site, not just to get their job done, but to get our customers' needs met, right? But a couple of things come up for me in what you just said. And one of them is, we talk about what are the fundamental attributes that your company will need that are specific to, the DNA that is going to be required to get your mission achieved. And those are going to be unique, from company to company, industry to industry. But two of those attributes that coming through this pandemic have made mission critical for any company of any size in any industry are resilience and adaptability. And, you talk about how there are certain people throughout the ranks from C-suite on down who have used COVID-19 as an excuse to coast. There are certain employees who get a pass because they are juggling some other things. But, I had this conversation with somebody yesterday, and he said, some businesses are not ready to look ahead yet. They're just trying to survive through this. And I understand that, but as leaders, the very top leadership have to, and we've talked about this in past conversations, have to have one eye on getting their business through the crisis, but keep one eye on that horizon. They have no choice. And, as we've talked about, the companies that will not get through this are the companies who can't see that, who cannot figure out how to not do business as usual, do business in this new normal, not just focus on, getting the lights back on. And, it really brings up, this, and you just said the phrase, this excuse of COVID. It's not like my business just burned down because of the carelessness of the guy who owns the restaurant next door to me. And so I have a very localized crisis that you all need to give me a pass on, right? This is a globally shared crisis. You cannot use COVID-19 as an excuse to ignore or mistreat or subserve your customers or your employees. You just can't do it. And even if you are a business who, as we know, the reality is not all businesses are going to get through this. Even if you are a business that ultimately is failing, until the very last day that you turn the lights out for good, make sure you treat your employees and your customers like the family that you want to have in that relationship, because that's what they're going to remember. That's going to be your legacy. Even if you are the head of an ultimately failed business, they're going to remember how you treated them.
Yeah, it's the Maya Angelou. It's not what you
Absolutely.
said. It's
I
not
know. I
what you
feel like I just
did.
channeled Maya there.
Yeah, exactly. You just channeled Maya. It's not what you said. It's not what it's
You
how you
feel
made them feel. It is. It's how you
it.
make people feel. And that goes with people inside the company. It goes with people outside the company. It doesn't really matter. And you're right. It's people want to feel listened to, understood, and valued. It comes down to that. If we can listen to, understand, and value both employees and customers, and understand that we are nothing without them. And our role as leaders every day is to wake up and say, how can we make people's lives better around us?
Yeah.
And if we can wake up every morning and say, what do we need to do to build better tools to allow other people to succeed around us?
Yeah.
Those are the companies that are going to go far. Yeah, and I want to say this, and then we're probably going to wrap up. Is that you're absolutely correct. We all need to have one eye on the horizon. And the conversations I'm having right now, I'm starting to do a lot of round tables with customers about what's next, about assessing what has happened, assessing where we are, what policies and procedures happened during the crisis that were band-aid solutions that are something that were relevant during the time of crisis and no longer relevant and no longer need to be a de facto policy or procedure, and what needs to change, what are the elephants in the room that need to be discussed, and what cows need to be killed, because there's no sacred cows anymore,
That's right.
in order to move the business forward and be able to sit there and say, where do we want to be? Because every business has an opportunity right now to have a clean slate to sit there and say, who do we want to be moving forward? Because this is global, because everybody's affected, because everybody is sitting there in a position where they're moving forward from a step backwards. And because of that, we as organizations need to be sitting there going, who are the people that we truly want to serve? What is our true value in the world? Who are we valuable to? Why are we valuable to them? What do we do that make people's lives better? And make sure that not only our customers know this, but our employees know this. Because if they understand where we're going and how they belong to that, and how what they do matters, and they're empowered to help the customers achieve their goals, they're going to be more engaged. They're going to stay longer. They're going to become better advocates for the brand. They're going to build better customer experience, more loyal clients. And guess what? Those customers are going to be less price sensitive. So
That's
we
right.
need to start thinking that way. As leaders, we need to start thinking, what's the experience that we want to have moving forward? And be able to empower that experience both inside our corporations and outside our corporations, to be able to sit there and say, okay, our client base may be smaller, but that client base that we have is way more loyal and way more, more valuable to us.
Yeah. 100%. The relationships, true, authentic, genuine relationships build loyalty, and the loyalty is what builds profitability.
I agree. You know what? I'm leaving you with the last word on that.
Love it.
Claire, it has been a pleasure doing this with you again. Thanks for everybody for listening in. We're going to be back next week with another episode. Join us on the YouTube channel, and we're looking forward to hearing your comments. This has been Ben and Claire. This has been Creating the New Normal, a leadership in a post-pandemic world. Have a great week.
Happy Friday, everyone.